Okay, yeah, we're live. Hey, Diana, how are you?
Hey Dale, I'm good. How are you?
Awesome, awesome. I'm just going to turn down my microphone here. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I'm excited for this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I'll kind of give you a bit of a context here. So our health and wealth program, what we do essentially is we help people, whether you're a real estate investor, financial professional, whether you are a business professional, entrepreneur, we help entrepreneurs and professionals get context to their lives, bring context to their lives. Because what we do sometimes, I'm not sure if you're guilty of it because I know I am, is we have a tendency of really focusing on everything it takes for one to build a career, build a life, build their future, build their business, and we have a tendency to put the things that sometimes are perhaps important, like our health, our mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical health. We tend to put those aside for that all one day in the future, that it'll happen one time, one day in the future type of mindset. But unfortunately, what happens is that we forget to take care of some of the most important things on our journey. And what we do essentially is we develop these habits and these ingrained habits, and we become workaholics. I'm not sure about you if you're a workaholic or not, but I certainly can be. Working 7 days a week, and it has an impact. It has an impact on our relationships, has an impact on our health, has an impact on our well-being, has an impact on our physical health, and as well. So the intention of our health and wealth performance strategy is to help people create that balance. How do you find that balance? How do you ensure that you're enjoying your life while you're building your wealth, which can be very, very difficult to do? So I invited you on here because each time we have a conversation, we have a discussion, it's always fun, it's always joyful, it's always exciting. We always tend to have really meaningful conversations, and you always strike me as someone who is just constantly joyful and happy. And so my goal here is to really kind of understand what is your secret to having a real estate investing career and having all these things happening in your life, but yet you're still joyful, you're excited, you're just a lot of fun to be with. So thank you again for coming on, and I would really want to know, like, what is it that have you be in that space on a continuing basis?
Thank you for the compliments.
You're welcome.
For me, I think what it is really being able to know yourself well, to be honest,
Mm,
so that you are being able to be the best you. So specifically,
mm,
let's say with me, for example, I know I'm an introvert. So I know I need time to myself so that I can be my best version of me when I'm going places, if I'm going out and stuff. So usually if I'm out, I also like mentally prepare myself to go out. I feel like with extroverts, they're the other way around, right? They
mm.
they go out and they're already ready. They're like they just want to have fun and they're ready to go out. With me, there's a process. I need to like mentally prepare for it so that I can be that fun person that just wants to enjoy things. So I know when to relax. I know when to go out and have fun. I know myself quite well. So I know how to, do whatever I need to do because I know who I am and I know myself.
Awesome. Now you said you're introvert. Now, let's talk more about that, because if you can just share a bit about yourself, your background, just do an introduction about yourself so everyone can kind of get to know who you are.
Okay, yeah. So I was an engineer, so I studied electrical engineering. I was a consultant and I would create business processes for companies. And then, so basically, I love to build solutions. Is basically what I'm all about. I really love that. And so that's what coming into real estate and becoming a real estate investor really kind of hit home for me. It was, to be honest, to me, the same skills. You're there um, building solutions, for the families that are having to sell, for yourself to be able to make sure you're selling the house to the right people, and just building, like making sure that house is beautiful, or whatever you want to do with it, it does its job. So it was something that was just the same thing. It worked really well. I was able to transition very well from being an engineer to becoming a real estate investor. And for me, as an as a introvert, I'm basically, to me, the definition of an introvert is, because people get very confused actually by it, especially when they look at me, they think, oh my God, you're so outgoing, you're so much fun in public. And, but the thing is, you have to understand the scenario that's happening around that. So so one, first of all, I'm fun around people that I get along with and I know well enough that I can be myself. I become a very different person if I'm around a whole bunch of people I don't know, just because I kind of am more of like, I become more observant and stuff. But an introvert to me is someone who basically starts with, like I consider it, like I call it like a battery. You know, for me, for example, to go to an environment that's very social, it kind of depletes my energy a lot. So I need to come with a battery full, ready and like ready to go, because by the end of the night I'm like at a zero, and I probably don't even make it to the end of the night sometimes, because it's just that to me is like a very exhausting thing. Whereas an introvert is like the opposite way around, right? They come like with a zero battery, and being around people just like brings up their like 100% charge. They can last the night and they can just have so much fun because they're around people. So yeah, so
And I
for
get
me, it's
that.
like that.
And
Like I need time
for
to
well, using that
recharge.
definition,
Sorry, you were saying?
well, using that definition, I can definitely tell you that using that definition, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, I can
Okay,
hear you.
so using that definition, I can definitely tell you, I am I am an extrovert for sure, because I love being around people, and I just love just empowering people. I just I get excited with when I'm in a crowd of people that I don't know, and especially, my wife calls me a joker, so I love telling jokes, especially, get seeing people laugh, and I get energized out of that. So essentially, I can be in a room full of people, and depending on if it's people that even people I don't know, I'm easy for me to kind of go up to people and say, hey, how you doing? I don't know you, shake your hand. And because I just see people as a planet, as a whole world. They have experiences, they have insight, they have they have thoughts, they have their background, all these things. And it's basically 15 minutes with someone, you could get to know, for example, a whole culture. So I just find people just fascinating that way. So definitely, I'm an introvert. You're an introvert. I'm an extrovert, but yet somehow our conversations work, right?
Yeah, and one of
You're
the
able
things,
to.
for example, like another thing that's the difference between an introvert and extrovert is, for example, because I know you're an extrovert, but one of the things that I know with
Yeah,
you that's probably really like you love to do is that you can go, like you said, talk to a big group of people, and you love that kind of conversation. If you notice, for example, introverts are very one-on-one, right? Like I love to, for
yeah,
example, like deep dive, although we do some deep diving, but probably because
yeah,
I
absolutely.
dig it a little bit more. But I'm a
Yeah,
one-on-one speaker. Like I'll go and I like will deep dive into conversations. So I'm more of a one-on-one, let's say, speaker. So I'll like go
yeah.
through the room and talk to people one-on-one, compared to you could probably just go right to a group and you just be talking to groups of people at once.
Oh
And then
yeah,
yeah, you may obviously go into like the one-on-one conversations. It's not that you don't,
yeah,
but
yeah,
you thrive in the group conversations, with to you that's very
yeah.
easy. For example, for me, I'm not very good at the group conversations. I'm very much let's get into you and let me get to know you. Who is Dale?
Yeah, yes, yes, yes. And you know what? Based on that, there's a lot of people who will be watching this and they're asking themselves, well, I am not an introvert. Should I get into investing in real estate? Should because, it's all about connecting with people. At the end of the day, you have an opportunity, however that opportunity might present itself. but there's a seller, or or there's a seller, and if you're the buyer, you will have to go through connecting with people, talking to people, having conversation with people. So being an introvert does not prevent you from being a very successful real estate investor. So if you're watching this and you consider yourself an introvert, not to worry. It is absolutely possible, because the extrovert, we get the we get the fanfare out there. We get we get the spotlight a lot of the times, right? But when it comes to investing in real estate, you don't have to be you don't have to be out there. You don't have a lot of flair to be very successful. And obviously, Diana, you prove that.
Yeah, thank you. And just to add on to that, it's again knowing yourself, right? For example, for me, I knew, especially with in university times is where I really started seeing it the most, is that I started to learn how to navigate big groups of people, especially when I didn't know. If I know a lot of people, it's very easy because you're within so many people, it's a lot easier to have the conversation. But my problem was not knowing a lot of people, and I would struggle at that because I also just would get like the anxiety of being around so many people I didn't know. That made me feel very uncomfortable. So I started learning a lot, even just again have myself. Like I know I'm good at the one-on-ones. I found that less scary to go, for example, talk to that lonely person that's in the corner
Mm.
than to go and try to have a conversation in a group. So like that's
Mm.
where again, like I feel like knowing yourself really helps, because if you're an introvert, probably yes, it's gonna be scary to go into a big group, but then go to that event, but you go and you strike a conversation with someone that is, for example, like on their own, because they're probably an introvert anyways too.
Yeah, that's
So you
true.
guys understand each other.
That's true. You got to find your people. Find your people in the crowd, right?
Yeah. So that was
So
something that I say helped me a lot to
yeah,
be able to like that be in big crowds and be able to network and use my skills to be able to network and not be so intimidated. I mean, it was still scary because of the anxiety of just like being in areas where you didn't know very many people, but it
yes.
helped for me to kind of have that mission where I was like, okay, I'm gonna find a person that's on their own and I'm just gonna strike a conversation with them.
That's a great strategy. That's a really good strategy. So tell me, why, first of all, you got into investing in real estate, and how did you make that transition? Or what was the impetus? Like, what was the motivation that had you say, I'm an engineer, I love engineering, I spent many many years becoming an engineer, because you don't wake up overnight and say I'm going to be an engineer. It takes time, it takes investment, it takes a lot of brain power, right, to become an engineer. What type of engineer were you, by the way?
Electrical engineer.
Electrical engineer. So it had its levels of difficulty, right? So promising possibility of a career as an electrical engineer, right? There's lots of possibilities out there. So you said, you know what, this electrical engineering stuff is great, but I want to transition into a real estate investor. How did you make that transition?
Yeah. And
What,
even
what,
just
what was the reason, and how did you make the
catalyst.
transition?
Yeah, yeah. So my catalyst was actually very interesting like that. I started in the private sector. So it was a very cutthroat environment. And I was there for about 6 years. And I loved it. I loved what I did because it was exactly the environment that I like to be in, except for the cutthroat part. But it was very learning. I was always, any project I went, it was always learning. And so creating new solutions all the time. It was just things that my mind was always at work and I loved it. But then I got recruited by another company. And it was a public sector. So I started working for a bank. And and it's funny because I told them I was just kind of like, I'm not interested in moving anywhere else. I'm completely fine with what I work. I love what I do. And so I wasn't really convinced. And then what I got convinced me was all the benefits that came from it. You get going into
Mm.
the public sector, you get so many benefits. And they gave me like a huge raise of what I was getting paid. So I was like, okay, you know what? Let's do this. Let's see what it is. But then what I found out in the public sector, it's like the complete opposite of the private sector. It is
Mm.
very, very slow paced. It's not mentally stimulating in any way. everything takes like years to get done. And so I felt like my mind was dying, to be honest.
Hmm.
And the one good thing that I came out of it was that I had the time to learn. So I was and I was just learning with all the free time I had, because it was like night and day. Like it was, for example, 2 hours of my day would just be, I could get my work done in 2 hours of the day. Like that's how overly efficient I was, because I was in a cutthroat environment where it's a very go, you get things done. So going into the public sector, it was a very, very slow pace where I had like 6 hours to myself because I was just way too efficient. So I
Hmm.
started learning a lot more. I was already investing in this time, but then that's what showed me, that was the catalyst. So the catalyst was
Hmm.
basically, I'm not a fan of the cutthroat environment, because there were also some super stressful times where you're hustling and or you're doing things that you don't want and overstressed. But then I also didn't like the extreme of that my mind's not being used, I'm bored. And so,
Hmm.
and I've always, again, that was another thing. In the past, I've always wanted to be entrepreneur. I just never knew how to do it. I didn't know what I was going to do to get this done. And then finally, like that, I was just like, man, I always hear these people, these firms that they're able to invest so much money, they buy so many properties. And to me, it's like, why can't I do this? And so
Hmm.
in that time of working, I was able to learn a lot more about real estate, where how to actually make money in real estate. And so that's one of the things I attribute to actually going there, was I actually had the time to learn how investors are actually making money, because my mentality back then was just appreciation. You buy a property, wait 5 years, and then you start cash flowing on a property. And I'm
Yeah.
was like, how are people doing it now? I want to start making money now. I wanted some stability now. I want to grow now.
Yes.
All these
Yes.
questions were just like, other people are doing this now. Why can't I?
Yes.
And so that's what got me. And then so really COVID was a blessing in disguise, because obviously there's only so much learning you can do, and there's only so much work I can do after work. Whereas,
Yes.
and like that. So it was just COVID actually gave me, we went to working from home. I actually had 3 months where I didn't actually work, because they were so busy doing their work and I build systems. So I need to talk to teams. So no teams were available because everyone was in chaos mode trying to get everyone online. That I actually had 2 to 3 months where I got paid to like sit around, because they just didn't have, none of the teams that I had meeting with could talk to me.
Wow.
So that was when things just started like full on. Okay, let me put as much energy into this as I can right now, because I have all this time to get things
Hmm.
done. And it was the proof of concept, like that. At that time, I got a mentor, because I knew, for example, in myself, I knew all the information. I'm one of those people that I know way more than I need to know in real estate.
Hmm.
And so one of the
Hmm.
things I realized was like, I'm still not taking the actions that I should, like the bigger actions I should be taking. And
Hmm.
so I then was just like, I know why, because I still don't have the confidence, and I still ask myself the question, what if I miss something? And
Hmm.
so I ended up finding a mentor where you get group coaching, but you can get one-on-ones to ask your questions to just help you get on the way. And that's when I just took the plunge, and I was like, you know what? Time to get this done. Like that. It's during COVID. So I have the time where I can actually take advantage of it and learn more and take the actions much quicker. And I was able to like that move quickly. I mean, I was an athlete when I was young, so for me,
Hmm.
professional training was very normal for me. So I don't
Hmm.
have those fears. I actually understand what it is, like what the benefits of a coach are or a trainer are, like how much they advance you. So for me, that part wasn't like the scary part, because I know a lot of people are like, oh my God, spending so much money. I did that when I was young. So I mean, not me, obviously my parents did it, but I was used to that. Like I understood that to get further in life, you need coaching.
So you already had a very solid foundation from a mindset perspective. You had a great upbringing. You know how to challenge yourself. You had an athletic background, so you had a foundation of obviously you had a foundation of achievement and success. Obviously, you're highly in demand as an investor, as an engineer. So from a mindset perspective, so essentially you just use the thinking or the mindset you had as an engineer, and you just mapped it as an investor. So that said, what was your first what was the experience of your first investment opportunity? What was it? What was your experience of it? How did that go for you?
My very first one, when I was going more like, I'm guessing like hardcore into this, right? Because my other ones were
Yeah.
so easy. Once I
Well,
started
tell me
really
about
getting
those.
into this one, and once I
Yeah.
got into it, um, it was my very first one because I came in like that. I came with experience, and I wanted.
Mhm.
So I came into JV with someone because I was like, I know how to flip, I know how to do the burrs. I want to just do this at a quicker pace, and I want to do it
How
with
did you
her.
how did you know how to do it? How did you know how to do it early? Like, what was did you have that experience before?
Yeah.
How did
So for me, what happened like that? I was investing before, and
hmm?
my husband was a contractor. So we were already doing the burrs. We already had done the flips. The difference
Okay,
was that we were doing it at a much slower pace.
I see. I
So
see.
the stresses weren't as much as it is when you're running a business, right? When you're thinking about margins and meeting certain amounts of profits throughout the year and treating it as a
Yes.
business, that's a very different thing than when you're doing it as a hobby, I would say, right?
Yes. Yes.
So
Yes.
so it was a very different, and we were working with our own money. I never asked
Yeah.
other people for money. So things were working at a much slower pace. So this,
Hmm.
so my very first project, it was very intentional because I was
Hmm.
thinking of expansion. So I was thinking, okay, I'm gonna have my husband working on one project. I'm gonna have someone else working on another project. So I will be having to be so I was one thing was like I need to understand how the money partners are going to feel. So that was my first project was actually I wanted to be the money partner and I wanted to
Yeah.
understand how that works and how I would feel and my expectations of what I would want with my active partner. So my very first project was actually me being the money partner, which I ended up being terrible because I actually ended up taking over the project and kicking that person out. But it taught me a
Yes.
lot. It taught me a lot
Yeah.
about the importance of money and how to treat money and what I would want to see in an active partner. Another
Hmm.
thing I learned
What was
was
the issue there? Why did you have to take that person out? What was the challenge there?
so the challenge with him was when he there was two. So my our men the mentor at that time, he made everyone look amazing. He made certain people look amazing and sound like they had a lot of experience. And you realize that you take a lot of value from your mentor because you expect them
Hmm.
to. And so I realized after the fact that this guy had no experience. He was just like me. And I was specifically looking for people that were only experienced. And he sounded like it. So that was one problem. But basically, besides the lack of experience, because that's, to be honest, like I had experience. So we could have worked that part through. I would have maybe been a little bit more involved and just pushed that side through. But really, my biggest learning experience was that like transactional relationships versus personal relationships. Or I forget what it's called. Transactional versus what is it? Like person, like yeah, like a transactional relationship to just like building a relationship. So my mission
Hmm.
was also like that. Like I wanted to have an active partner that we have a good relationship and we're growing together. And this
Hmm.
person was very transactional. So the way he treated me was just like not good. The way, even for example, for a person who I know more than the general person does on renovations, this guy would still run circles around me to the point that I had to get my husband involved
Oh, I
because
see.
he was just not, the communication was bad. You know, communication was another very big learning experience, that having someone that can actually communicate. This person
Hmm.
was not good at communicating. And our
Hmm.
values were very off. So for example,
Hmm.
my values are very much like, I like to have build quality work. This guy was all about quantity. He was
Hmm.
mission was to have a project each month. But the problem was with inexperience, you can understand how chaotic that can be because delays can happen and all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
But what basically was it put the nail in the coffin was illegal things were happening in the property. And
Oh,
because
wow.
we had tenants there, we ended up finding out. And it was just like the last thing, like, I was just like, the last thing I need to do is be sued. And
Yeah.
so that was when we were just like, you know, we tried to work it out. We were trying to like that, build the communication. I was taking a bigger role in the active side because of his inexperience. And like that, we just like we tried like that. My husband took over for some time on the communication part, with specifically for the renovations, because you know, it's like when a person doesn't know what they're doing, so they'll say things to just run circles around you. And I know
Yes.
the thing is, I knew he was wrong in what he was saying. My problem was I wasn't technical enough to speak that language, right?
Yeah, I
So, for
see.
example, like that was a huge learning experience for me because as an engineer, my thought process was, because there were some signs that came up, but my thought process was, I'm around men all the time. I need to be tough around them because it is like a male dominated field. So I was used to that. But what I didn't realize was I know how to handle myself when it's like in that field of technical. So as an engineer, I have all the confidence. I'm able to do what I need to do. I can force whatever I need to get done because I have the confidence to speak. In renovations, I do have a higher level of understanding because my husband and I'm very involved in his business, but I couldn't do the technical conversation like others like I could, for example, on the engineering side. So that's where my husband came in a lot more. Or at the end, he started to come in because I just needed someone with that confidence on the renovation side to just kind of put him in his place and tell him like what really needs to happen.
Hmm. And so when you did that, what was how did how did he respond, and how did you manage that whole situation?
Like, and when we finished the, like, we just cut
How
it
did
up.
communication? Was it a confrontational type of conversation? Was it? How did you manage that? How did you navigate that relationship?
Yeah, so we had to go and check some of the renovations because we needed to get the roof was being finished. The roof was being
Mm.
done, had finished, and we had to pay them. So when we went there, I brought my husband in because I don't know anything about exterior. I just know more interior stuff because that's what my husband does, interior renovations. But he has past experience in exterior.
I see.
And so I specifically brought him in also for the purpose of, because I couldn't get through to this guy. He just
I
like
see.
things weren't moving. And I was already, this was me implementing strategy of like, I need someone that I can speak his language to get things moving forward. So when we
I see.
got there, it was a disaster. There was so many problems that again, my husband was able to talk to him. And like that, the difference in conversation was so much. When I would talk to him, he would just talk, circles. And I would just kind of like, I felt like a little, like, I felt like, I don't know, a little person. Like I just didn't know how to
Mm.
deal with that conversation because he would just go so super technical, so I couldn't engage in the conversation. And I think he did it purposely. When my
Yeah.
husband came in, his head was down and he was like listening to everything. It was
Mm.
such a different conversation because my husband knew how everything worked and knew how to speak, like speak his language.
Mm.
So like that. So we ended off that conversation, and
Mm.
then the next meeting we had was again with
What,
my
what
husband there.
what advice would you give women who don't have that husband, and they're dealing with for the most part, a male-dominated type of environment, especially on the construction side. What advice would you give women to how would they have that conversation if they don't have someone to call to have these discussions? Like, what would you do? What would you do if you did not have that?
So I think, for example, you wouldn't start on a type of project like I started, where it was a very big renovation. What I
Mm,
always advise women to do, and men too, anyone that's just not experienced in the renovation side of things, is one,
mm,
you want to start off with small projects, and two, you
mm,
want to have like you want to test out a couple people. Because the thing that
mm,
I say is there's different things that you want to watch out for. One, you're a new investor, and as an investor, we have to question things a lot more than, let's say, the general person would, because we need to have a better understanding of just investing in all sides of things. And so, for example, asking your contractors questions is a very good
mm,
way to know how they respond, because if there are people that don't want to answer your questions, that are pushing you away, they're not the contractor for you, because as a new investor, you really don't have very much idea of renovation, and you need
mm,
to start learning it. So obviously learning it outside too, but you need to have a contractor that's willing to answer your questions and talk things through, because that's a huge thing that I noticed, that there's not very many contractors out there that have the patience to talk to you. They just want to do their job
mm.
and leave, right? And that works if you know what you're talking about. Or, for example, it's a very simple project that doesn't require that much information. But as investors, we deal with a lot more different types of things where you do need to have a better understanding. So I say
Yeah.
that.
So you don't have to be like, you don't have to, because sometimes, the mindset, the thinking is, I heard some women that's coming into this particular space, they almost have to have like be a man type of mentality, have like a man type of personality, but you don't have to do that. You can definitely be able to hold your ground, be someone who's very who's very firm, very straight, very forward, but at the same time, you can still communicate in such a way that doesn't necessarily alienate the other person from you, but you also win them over so they can work with you. Have you found that as well?
Well, I would also say that personality is very important, which is
Mm,
going to be the second one. I say that you want to be able to speak with someone that you get along with. So, for
mm,
example, for me, I've had conversations with men that it's very funny, or contractors, I say. I mean, they've all been men, but where there's this one contractor, we are looking to add him to the team, and my husband was busy, but we needed to grow the team. And so I went to talk to him. And the conversation was very different with me than it was when he went through the second interview with my husband. And and I think being yourself is very important. And even like that, if you have a friend that's a guy, I think it is nice to see how those conversations changes, because for example, that person, he treated me like I was like didn't know anything about renovations, and I allowed it because I like to also see if you can actually talk to a person that doesn't know about renovations, right? Like, are
mm.
you able to dumb down things and make me understand what it is that you're doing, right? Because that's
Yeah.
very important as a person, especially, for example, a person who doesn't understand renovations. Is can we have that conversation and we can understand each other, and you can convey what you do in a non-technical sense, right? So for
Yes.
me, it was very interesting. To be honest, and I think being yourself is very important. It's also nice if you can bring along another person in a second meeting, for example, to see how he talks to that person. Because if a person's very versatile and they can talk to different types of people in different ways, to me, that's a very important asset. And I don't mind the discrimination, to be honest, because you need, like, sometimes at face value, you don't know who the kind of person is, what they know, and you have to just kind of like go with the flow and see, right? And it's like, can they adapt and change to the different types of environments they put into? Because that's probably another good thing that you can see in a contractor, right?
That's right. That's right. So you went through some challenges with that particular deal, and then that gave you the confidence. Now, when you think about that situation that you've experienced, would you have either A, prefer not to go through that experience, or B, go through that experience? In other words, if you had to do it all over again, would you still go through that, what you went through?
I would go through that because it actually brought a
Hmm.
lot more than I expected. So, for example,
Hmm.
in that time, one of the biggest ones that I was very surprised by was like that my husband was very, very busy, had zero interest in investing in real estate. He's like, I have to invest. He's like, I have to work on my business. I don't have time for this.
Hmm.
Him being involved in this and then helping me follow through and finish this project off actually is what got him into real estate. So that's like not even nothing related to like the other learning. That was just like a
Yeah.
one-off that I was like, wow, that was like something that kind of
A
pushed
bonus.
the needle forward for
Yeah.
my husband getting in because that's what got him into me. He would now after that, it was always like, get me another project, get me another project. I want to invest, I want to invest, right? So that was one.
Yes.
But mainly out of the rest, the purpose of me doing this project was to learn what it was to feel like a passive investor. And I learned it very, very
Hmm.
well. So I
Hmm.
actually learned a lot from that project because of how things went. And for example, like that, like imagine if a person didn't know, for example, like how to do payment structures or renovations. I could have lost a lot of money, but because I come with a renovation background, I know how to pay contractors. I know how that works to make sure that I don't get ripped off, but other people don't, you know? So for me, it was I had no problem. We ended up and what made it even better is we made a lot of money off that project. Even though we lost money, we
Yeah.
actually, as in not lost money, even though we spent a lot more on renovations because the workmanship was so bad, we had to redo a lot of the work.
Hmm.
Still made money from the project. It was still a successful project in that sense, in every sense. And I had my huge learning experience that I needed. I needed to understand what it is to be a passive partner and what are the feelings and what do I need to make sure that if I have passive partners, I
Yeah.
understand how they feel and how they're going to react. And so that I make sure I'm giving them what they need so that what happened to me doesn't happen to them.
Hmm. So what you're saying, if I can kind of recap here, the experience that you had, experience that you went through, it essentially it's a necessary one that every real estate investor has to go through, with variations, because what that'll do, it essentially helps to build your foundation of confidence, has to build your foundation of experience, and it also helps you to find solutions and develop solutions that you perhaps would not have figured out if you have not gone through it. So if for new investors or investors who are just they're going through the first, second, or third project, shying away or not embracing difficulty and hardship, and it can actually be detrimental to their future because they're not going to get that learning, they're not going to get that knowledge that they can build on as they continue to build their portfolio. Would you say that that's accurate?
100%. And the thing is, it depends on the speed that you want to move on. So
Hmm.
I was able to move quickly in real estate was because I was dealing with much bigger problems, right? Like the more problems that you face, the more learnings that you have, the quicker you go through real estate. And that's probably one of the reasons why I was able to move and learn so quickly was because and even in my consulting days, it was the same thing. I'd be put into these crazy ass projects where I'm supposed to be considered an expert. And I'm like literally learning on the job because these projects were so different. But if it
Yeah.
weren't for that, I wouldn't have advanced so much in my career also. Like advancements in the career, advancements in yourself is with those problems that come up because those ones are your biggest learning experiences. And especially the more they hurt, the
Yeah.
more chances that they will never happen again because you now implement certain things in place to make sure that kind of pain never happens to you again for that type of scenario. So it really depends on the speed also. If you want to move quickly, you got to go through those problems. Like what I said before when I was investing in real estate, we didn't go through any problems, but we are going through things very slowly, right? And
Hmm.
then now it's about making money each year. You got to make money every year. And to do that, we have to work on more projects. We have to work on better projects that make a lot more money. So that means that you're going to be dealing with more problems. Like, what do they say? The bigger the problem, the bigger the rewards. Be careful with
Yes.
that as a new investor, because may not work out so well.
Yes.
But if
Yes.
you have enough experience, it is very true. The bigger the problem, the more money you make if you're smart about it.
So just taking a couple steps back, right? How do you have a methodology, philosophy? Do you have a process or system that you can share and how to deal and manage problems, or do you like most investors out there? They essentially just just shoot from the hip. Whatever happens, happens. To deal with it as it comes. But do you have like a way to first of all isolate it, communicate it, share it, break it down, break it apart, and assess it? No, having an engineering brain, my my guess is that you do. But do you have a method like that?
I do, yeah. I
Yes.
think I think something that comes naturally to me is asking lots of questions. So I think having a full understanding of what it is that you're doing or what the problem is, I think is very, very important to helping solve things.
Now
Usually, beyond
that, that might seem simple, asking a lot of questions, but
or
that
asking the right questions, maybe is the better thing, right?
no,
Like
no,
knowing
asking
to
a lot
ask
of
the right
questions,
questions.
and that comes with experience. But asking questions may be intimidating for a lot of people because they don't know, like you said, they don't know what the right questions are. They might look stupid asking the wrong questions, or asking questions that may not be relevant. So just or even having the courage to ask questions that might be a bit, how do you say, revealing, or maybe embarrassed to ask certain type of questions, or maybe ask questions that are not right. So you kind of like put it aside. Have you experienced something like that where it might be difficult to ask, some challenging questions?
I think because of consulting,
Mm.
um, we always had to have full understandings of our projects to be able to give the best products. And for me, again, like I always have been the type of person to, I always want to like give the best. And to me, that's actually, I don't know, I've had since young that I know that to me, to be able to give my best, I have to ask questions and have a full understanding of what it
Mm.
is to be able to give my best. So for me, I feel like that's something I say that's been an innate me where I've always been a person that loves to ask questions. And I love
Mm.
to just understand how people work, how things work, how the problems are, see all sides of
Mhm.
the problem has always been
Mhm.
something that's very important to me and that I just enjoy to do.
For someone who's not who it's where it's not innate. For example, you have someone who is so you have the benefit of being an engineer, having that engineering experience, that project based experience. Also, you have the benefit of being in projects, and you also have the benefit of that foundational mindset. But for those introverts and extroverts as well, who don't have that innate ability to just be bold enough, like you, by the way, to ask those questions, what would you suggest? How would you help someone to step out of that comfort zone to ask them those questions where they might be either intimidated by someone that you mentioned earlier, your mentor, who's running rings around them, and telling them what to do and more experienced than they are, So what would you suggest how would you approach that for someone who's very experienced, like, and put you in that situation?
Hmm. So I don't know about getting the confidence because I'm surprised you say that's bold because I've never thought of that as being bold, asking questions.
Hmm.
So, but what I do want to say is that if you're answering the question in your head, that's called an assumption. If you're making
Yes.
assumptions, you should stop and ask the question to the person so that they validate if what's inside your head is actually the truth.
Yes.
So I would say more bringing the awareness to what's going on in your head and making sure, because I feel like what I normally see a lot of people do is they make a lot of assumptions and do things on their assumptions without actually and not realizing that those were assumptions. and then
Well,
you're
that could be it's a very expensive lesson.
it becomes a very
Um,
expensive lesson instead
yeah.
of just asking and having a full understanding and having the other people tell you. And also
Hmm.
making sure even asking more than one, because sometimes it may involve more than one person depending on the kind of problem, right? It's
Yes.
making sure you have a full scope of what it is that the problem is. But in the sense of being shy of asking questions, I don't
Hmm.
think are people actually shy to ask questions? I guess shy in the sense
Absolutely.
of if
Yeah.
it's not your area of expertise, maybe.
Exactly. Exactly. Sometimes I'm just like you. Sometimes, by the way, when you have experience in something for so long, it becomes almost second nature, and you tend to have a tendency to forget the not necessarily forget, but for example, I was dealing with someone who is a mathematician. I mean, they're like high end. I mean, like this the math is so beyond the understanding of the regular person, right? So their brain is always in that pace. But you ask them to do some basic, simple calculations, they can't do it because their brain doesn't function that way anymore. So
Mhm.
sometimes we get so immersed in our expertise, we forget what it was like in the beginning, especially when you've had difficult, especially when you grow up in an environment where some people are told how they grew up. Be
That's true,
quiet,
actually,
say
not
the
to ask
word.
questions, none of your
Yeah,
business.
especially exactly. And when you grow up in school, then the major challenge is when you grow up in whether it's high school or university, you better have that question right. If you get that question, you raise your hand, you get that question wrong, oh my goodness, the ridicules, the laughter. And some people grow up with that,
Yeah.
especially the school system tells us we have to be right. So it's conditioning over years and years and years, knowing that you have to be right all the time, especially when you're being tested about something. So we have this conditioning to say, well, you have to be right. Whereas in the real world, it's about making mistakes. It's about getting it wrong. It's about not making yourself wrong, not feeling bad about being wrong. Because more times you're wrong, you're able to correct it. Because if you don't have that courage to kind of step out there and really have a way of communicating those questions in such a way that you're not necessarily making the other person feel that they are wrong or bad for what they're doing, but essentially you're creating a bridge of partnership, right? So, I found that the way to ask those questions is more like coming from a place of, look, my intention is understanding. My intention is partnership. My intention is profitability, and I have some thoughts that would either help me basically understand because I can contribute to the project in a different way, right? So rather than it coming across as being confronting, it can come across as being more of a partnership. And that took me years to kind of figure out because I'm the type of person that'll be like, I have these lists of questions. I can be very confronting, put people back on their heels, make them feel very uncomfortable. And from a partnership perspective, you may not want to deal with me because I can be very much in your face when it comes to that. But it
Mhm.
really alienates the person relationship, right? So when I'm dealing with someone, I always want to come from a place of community and partnership. And that helps me a lot to kind of, so that people are not feeling as though I'm kind of like being in their face, about a particular situation. And it gives me the space to freely explore every possibility, every question, because sometimes, you lift up, you open lift up a rock and you don't want to know what's under that rock sometimes. or, or you open up that can of worms, right? And it's a can of worms. It
Mhm.
is, right? It's something that you don't want to discuss. So keep that close. And sometimes we as people, you have conversations with people, and there's a massive elephant in the room. There's a conversation that to be had, but you don't want to have the conversation. The elephant is obvious is there, but you don't want to have the conversation because of what it potentially can create, right? So, but for amazing people like yourself, these types of situations come very natural. But some people they have actually difficulty going there.
Yeah. And actually, so I do have advice for that because I think that's something more of not related to asking questions, but more about fears.
Yes.
And maybe I would say also like respect and communication. So
Yes.
one, for example, communication. If you're wanting to ask questions, let's say related to problems or lack of understanding, I think you should say to them like, "Hey, I don't understand what the problem is." And then so that you're giving them a base, right? Because
Yes.
then you're coming in a base of, I'm not here to judge, I'm here to understand. Because there's
Yes.
not problems coming up. I've seen this a lot. There's a problem up,
Yes.
everyone is stressed, and
Yes.
the people who are stressed because they're dealing with the problem become automatically in defense mode, right? And they're
Yes.
like, they think you're coming to blame them. And so I think if you're coming in without just not asking the question, because that becomes like, they feel like they're getting targeted and they're being blamed,
Threatened. Yeah, they
especially
feel
the
threatened.
contractor world. And I understand that
Yeah.
because I worked in the IT world and it's the same thing. IT people get blamed for everything. Contractors
Yeah.
get blamed for everything, right? So coming in with the right intention to, or the right mentality of, hey, I heard this problem. Let's talk about it. Can I understand more of what it is? And then to ask your, and then let them answer the question, and then you dig deeper to understand the problem, right? So I think,
Exactly.
and what I would also say to that, very pivotal, is separating people, because like that,
Hmm.
you have to talk on one-on-ones, because especially when things are stressful, or even out of respect, maybe it's just personal conversation. I find these situations better as a one-on-one conversation,
True.
because one, if it's a problem, again, you got stressful people around, you can manage one person better than, for example, another one maybe getting
True.
defensive and then backing that other person up. For example, when you're just like, we're not blaming here, we're just trying to figure out what the issue is, right? So
True.
I kind of like that separation and asking, and it also gives that privacy respect for people to
That's
be able
true.
to speak in a safe space. And like I said, the communication.
Hmm.
Now, if you are the person yourself who has the fears of asking questions, something that I heard about that I love, that I want to share, is
Sure.
if you are in a state of fear, anxiety, that means you're being selfish. Now, what
Hmm.
do I mean by that? That means you're in I mode. Like
Ah.
me, I suck
Yeah.
at this. I'm terrible at that. Nobody loves me. I don't know. It's all about being selfish and thinking about yourself.
So true.
So
So
if
true.
you want to get out of that fear, you go to giving sense. How can I help? What can I do for you? Get yourself out of the selfish and get into, okay, like let me help you do something. Let me give you something. And then you'll see, like once you get out of that, like your fears start going away a lot more, because now you're not focused on you, you're focused on other people.
Great point. Great. That's great. That's a great strategy. Absolutely right. Because you're right. When you're shy, uncertain, right? It is all about you, how you look. You're afraid of looking bad, or you just want to look good. So therefore, you're going to kind of step back. But that's great advice. So when you're looking at 2023, what would you say your biggest accomplishment is in 2023?
2023 has been interesting.
Hmm.
I haven't increased my income,
Hmm.
so I can't say it's an income increase or anything. But what I
Yeah.
can say, I've been very heavily focused on mindset, because
Yeah.
I have been placing things in order to grow, and
Hmm.
and I've been in a very like collaborative mode this year to be able to collaborate with people, to be able to grow big with people and do big things with people. And even my application, to be able to help people. So I feel like I've been for right this year has been, I would say, a year of like setting up the base, is what I would
I
say.
see. Awesome. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's my
Because
achievements.
I'm not too sure if you know the Burj Khalifa. I think that's the name. I think that's what it's called. Please fact check me if you want. But it's one of the biggest, tallest buildings in the world. It's in Dubai, right? And it took them a long time, very, very long time to build that building because they had to work on the foundation. They had to work on the base. They had to, like any building, as a matter of fact, the first thing you do is you work on the foundation, work on the base. So, and the deeper your base, the longer you work on that base, more solid it is, the bigger you grow. So you're setting yourself up for future growth for the future by laying that foundation for your future.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yep, that's exactly what it is. This year, I feel like it's been a base year for me. Getting my
Awesome.
bases, preparing to really expand and grow much bigger than I possibly can think of now.
And that's great because sometimes people look at success as a monetary thing or monetary growth and acquisition type of thing. But for the most part, it could just be sometimes you just have to take a step back and work on your foundation. And based on that, you have a lot of things you learn in 2023. What would you take with you in 2024, and what would you leave back in 2023? What would you say those things might be?
Right
Are there
now,
lessons
actually, the thing I'm actually working on right now is
learned?
basically fear, actually.
Awesome. Yeah.
I'm trying to let go of the Diana right now and
Mm-hmm.
trying to step out of my comfort zone to go much bigger and to be able, and I've noticed my problems this year have been fear based. I've been stopping myself from going bigger because of the fears. So I've
Hmm.
been really focused on eliminating my fears and being more like looking behind the fear and being
Mhm.
able to solve the problems and not letting the fears get a hold of me.
That's really great because I've been on that journey this year myself, and one of the things I've done is I have a number of different personal challenges. So the challenge that I'm taking on January, I believe it's January 1st, is the polar bear challenge. Not sure if you know about that, right?
Yes,
Where
I do.
you
Very
the
chilly.
first day, what's that?
Very chilly.
Yeah, first of the year, you just jump in. I think it's Lake Ontario, right? So you have to, figure that. So hey, if you want to join me, right, and hundreds of other people across the country taking on the Polar Bear Challenge, that's something you probably actually participate in as well. But yeah, taking on different challenges, disappearing fear. That's a topic that, unfortunately, for the most part, you need the fear, the excitement. That's what keeps you alive. That's it makes you alive. That fear. It makes sure it's pulsing, but not allowing that fear to dominate you, to stop you, to prevent you from taking action into what that you had to do.
Mhm. Yeah, so that's
Right?
been
Have you?
like that. I haven't grown in my income, and I know it's because of me. And
Hmm.
but at the same time, like that, I've been setting up things into place to be able to grow, and and then at the same time, like that, working on myself so that I can allow myself to get out of the comfort zone and not have such hard pullbacks. Because I've been getting some really hard pullbacks, some great opportunities, but then I get pulled back. So trying to
Hmm.
just push through those.
That's a topic that so many people can actually a conversation that so many people can actually benefit from because we all deal with that. We all deal with having that fear and that pullback. Is there any specific situation that you've been through that you can say, yeah, I've experienced that, but here's what I've done to get past it?
Actually, I'm going through it right now. I'm investing in a deal in the US,
Hmm.
and it's the scariest thing for me because everything is new to me. I've never invested in the US, and on top of it, it comes with a business. So
Hmm.
it's a lot of learning, and the fear has been high, that's for sure. And that's why I've been researching a lot about fear actually to learn to control it so that I can push through and just finish off this project and
Hmm.
get this project under my belt.
Awesome. Well, knowing who you are, knowing your personality, knowing your mentality, I'm very, very confident that you're going to get past it.
I will. I know myself too.
Very confident. So, what are your plans for 2024? Like, what's your goal for 2024?
2024 is to grow a lot bigger.
Hmm.
It's so basically getting onto bigger projects, um, finding bigger money, and just basically like say 10xing, like Aaron Codon like says, 10xing in a lot of different areas of my life.
Awesome. And do you have anything that you're launching that you're doing in 2024 that's going to achieve that?
Many different things like that. Like I have so many different things going on.
Yes.
So it's just some of them
You
are
mentioned
moving. Mhm.
that you have a new show happening.
I do have a new show. Again, it's on the side of giving and not thinking about myself with all the
Hmm.
fears.
Yeah. Yeah.
So me and Elizabeth Kelly are doing a show. And it's called Cracking the Code to Your Real Estate Challenge. So that's where you can send me a DM, you can send Elizabeth a DM, or you can post it on Refam because there are also people there that can help answer the questions too. Because the purpose of this show is to mastermind, because
Hmm.
many heads can figure out many different problems and help you mastermind on your problems. So you send us the problem. Usually, I'll ask some questions to get a better understanding of it, and then on the show, we will talk, we'll bounce, me and Elizabeth bounce ideas on how we would solve it. And yeah, and then find some different solutions. And if you're there watching it, you can also expand on it in the comments if you need to, so
Hmm.
that we tailor it to your specific needs.
You mentioned Refam. Can you share about that?
So Refam is a social networking platform that I've created. And the purpose of it is to actually help real estate investors, mentors, and professionals build credibility and trust in their communities. And also, like that, it's a social networking platform. So you can go in there, ask your questions, give advice, help each other out. It's all about masterminding, supporting each other, and growing together. And so it's a
Hmm.
platform that's dedicated to the real estate investing industry. So if you're an investor, you're a mentor, you're a professional that's in the real estate investing industry, this is the place that you want to be.
Awesome. So how do you get access to that? How do you get connected with Refam?
Yeah, you can go to Real Estate Investor Fam, FAM,
Hmm.
realestaiteinvestorfam.com. You can
Hmm.
register for free. You can also pay. You get much more advanced features, which you'll love to see. And yeah, it's free, so you can even go free, join, check it out, see what you like about it, and enjoy all the benefits of it.
And how do someone get a hold of you to participate in the weekly events with yourself and Elizabeth Kelly if you have a question regarding real estate?
Yeah, so you can reach out to me on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn, and
Hmm.
it's and my handle is real estate investor. Sorry, investor girl Diana, investor girl Diana on any of those. So I'm just used to like refam now, but
That's okay.
investor girl Diana, any of those, you can send me a DM or like that. You can go to realestaiteinvestorfam.com. You can post your comments there because there is a lot of experienced investors in there that can also share. Because, like I say, it's all about different points of view, giving you different points of view to give you a solution that actually works for you that you probably would have never thought of. If you saw last month, there was a very big, there's a really good solution that even I never thought of.
I missed that. What was that?
I was saying that if you watch the last episode of it, we came up with a solution that was actually something that I would have never even thought of. So like that, as people bring in their problems, you you will and put them into Refam. Different investors think very differently and will provide different solutions that you never thought of. So use the power of masterminding and be in a supportive community that will accept to help answer your questions.
Wow, awesome, awesome. And again, how do we get a hold of you once again? Is real investor.
Investor Girl Diana on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn.
Awesome. Dan, since I've met you, we've always had this really amazing connection. You've always been so funny. You've always been such an amazing person to connect with and communicate with. We've always had great conversations. And now I have a better understanding of how your thought process works and how you think and how you approach life, approach situations. And I'm really excited to hear that one of the conversations you're having and have been having, how you deal with life, essentially is just working on yourself and working on specific areas of your life, which is working on your fears, because that's going to help you to put aside some of the challenges you're dealing with, so you can essentially grow your business. So that's something that you're always dealing with. So that's probably when you're sick, and how you deal with that in life. So thank you so much for sharing that with me, and thank you so much for sharing that with everyone today. I'm very, very confident that everyone's going to get a lot of value from what you shared. Now, before we go, one last question. It's not the aliens question, by the way, but one last question is what book are you reading?
Yeah, so the one that I love, I've actually read this a few times, and I think it's
Yes,
very pivotal to anything that you're getting into personal development, starting a business. It's called The Power of Awareness.
Power of Awareness.
Power
Great
of
book.
Awareness is a really good book. It helps you really realize what's going on in your head and how to improve yourself. So you're not basically like that, making these assumptions.
That's great because it all starts with awareness.
Hmm.
That's where it all starts. Without being aware of the things that are impacting you, you have no opportunity, you have no access to transforming it. So becoming aware is a first step in the process. So great book, and it's a great starting point for a lot of people.
Yes,
So
yeah,
thank
I
you so
love
much for
that.
that.
Yeah, no problem. And thanks
Diana,
for
it's a
having me
pleasure.
on. And like you
I'm looking
said, we
forward
always
for
have such a fun
looking
conversation.
yeah,
Thanks so much for having me on.
absolutely. I'm looking forward for our next conversation.
100%.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye.